All right.
4 big bottles of water a day, 2 packs of Marlboro Reds, and what keeps me alive? Shit.
All right. 3.
Music.
2.
I have to listen to music.
Yo, what's good? And welcome back to another episode of the Colour Reimagined Podcast, presented to you by People of Color Clothing. And today we have a very, I always say special, but this is an important topic. We're talking about mental health awareness, mental health, just mental health in general, right? So it is Mental Health Month, so it's only right that we have a mental health conversation. Unfortunately, my co-host Mark Brown wasn't able to make it today, but I have something very special for you guys. We have a guest who just so happens to be a mental health professional. So without further ado, let me introduce Reginald Gilmore. All right, give it up for Reginald Gilmore.
I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, for sure, man. I know we was talking offline. Mark is the catalyst of setting this whole thing up. So shout out to Mark Brown. But just kind of offline, you were telling me about just what it's like to be a mental health professional, and it's just an honor to have you here. You're kind of like a unicorn in the industry. So to have you in this type of setting, to have you be able to share your experience with the audience is going to be very helpful. So hopefully, I've curated some questions that can really pinpoint and help people get a better understanding of mental health and what you do and how you got to where you are. And yeah, I'm excited to have the conversation.
I'm excited to jump in.
For sure, man. So let's just hop right in. Can you kind of share with us the inspiration behind wanting to become a mental health specialist? And then on the back end of that question, like what was that path like, from an educational standpoint?
So growing up, I've always been into sports. I never saw myself as an academic individual, thriving in academics. I never saw myself thriving in academics. But growing up, my mom has been chronically ill for 25 years. And, she's always had this person around that, made sure she had her medication or made sure that she had what she needed, after surgeries and things of that nature. And later in life, I found out that was a social worker. And that social work word just kept coming up over and over again. There was a time when we fell on hard times and, we was down at the state building and mom was trying to get access to food stamps. And, she leaned over and told me, hey, I think you would be a great social worker. And, that's the field that I'm in and I'm working in now,
It's crazy how you kind of came full circle. Like you had that moment when you were young. And then fast forward, not really knowing, like, and I think we kind of spoke offline too during the pre-interview. You was like, you were pursuing like engineering or something like that to begin with.
Pre-engineering, and it just wasn't working for me. It wasn't working for me, especially not with the schedule that I had, playing basketball and always being on the road.
Yeah, and that's dope, man. That's dope. I think it's cool how you use something that was personal to you to inspire you to then become who you are today and help other people, right? So I think that's dope. And then, pursuing your master's in social work, could you kind of like describe that experience? Like what did the classroom atmosphere look like? What did the educational path look like? And like what has like the postgraduate experience been like for you?
It was a big change for me. I started out at a private university, Free Hartman University. And when I went back to school to achieve my master's, I was at a state school. So the classrooms were a lot bigger.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The relationships with my professors were different. And it took some adjusting on my part. When I was a college athlete, I had access to tutors. And when I was in my graduate program, I had to take on a load of the coursework on my own. So, just trying to encourage myself that I could do it and, just trying to stay consistent and focused. I was working full time. I was working 2 jobs. Actually, I was 2 jobs at the time. And, again, like I said, just that passion that I had and wanting to help others and wanting to obtain, my license kept me going.
And that's dope. Like, what was the classroom setting like, though? Was it And because we kind of talked in the pre-interview process, like I remember you telling me like it wasn't as diverse, and then you also mentioned like a certain professor that might have been like a catalyst in helping you, stay the course.
So originally transitioning majors and, taking my qualifying courses to
Mm-hmm.
achieve my bachelor's degree or my master's degree, I realized that, I was the only Black male in the classroom setting. Uh, the field is dominated by, females,
Yeah.
and females do a wonderful job in this profession. But I think a lot of times when you get higher up in the field and you start doing clinical work, you start to notice that there are a lot of males that need attention and they feel comfortable talking to other males. So, working around females kind of discouraged me. And if it wasn't for Nadine McDill, one of my professors at Freeharm University, that told me that, I would be a unicorn in the field and that, I could help my community in some pretty amazing ways, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I would be here today. So, every chance I get, I call out her name, and, I really do appreciate her encouraging me to stay the course.
And that's dope. And I think like kind of just marinating on that conversation that we had. I kind of thought about the diversity aspect, right? You being a unicorn, you being surrounded, you being in a female dominated industry, as a Black male who is pursuing or who is in the pursuit of becoming a licensed therapist, being in that environment that lacked diversity, do you think that at some point, that's kind of a hindrance to the therapy workforce, not having the, I guess, the gender diversity, but also the racial diversity, right? Because when I think of therapy, I think of wanting to talk to somebody who is competent in what I go through, how I talk, how I move, how, what my upbringing was like. So do you think like that could possibly have or be a hindrance that may not be talked about enough within the academia sector, not having like diverse cohorts of people who are pursuing their career in therapy?
Most definitely, and it's a disservice to our community. If you think about it, some of our struggles are the same,
Mm-hmm.
and we're able to relate in a lot of ways. So, when I sit down in that chair, or when I sit down on that couch and I see someone on the other side of it, that resembles me or that looks like me, I'm able to build a rapport faster because we have a connection that's already been created through our life experiences.
Yeah.
And, if we don't have enough Black individuals or enough Black males and Black females that are in a range of fields to be able to make an individual feel comfortable about accessing these services, then, we find ourselves in a predicament that we are in today, where, the Black community is just now starting to highlight the importance of mental health.
Oh,
This
for
should
sure.
this should happen years ago.
For
This should
sure.
happen years ago. Mental health is just as critical as our health in general.
Yeah.
So, it's very important that we diversify these fields and that we research these fields that lack individuals that look like us, and
Mm-hmm.
encourage the generation that's coming up to make a way.
And that's kind of why you're so important, because you are that example, right? You are that walking, breathing example of like, this is who I am. This is what I did. I did play college basketball. I did go to a private university. I did go to a state school. But I put the ball down and I pursued something a little bit more serious, right? So people can now look at you and your example and say, you know what, I want to be like, Reginald Gilmore, right? I want to be like Reggie, right? I don't want to be like Mike. I want to be like Reggie. So I think it's cool being who you are. And then when you think about it from a Black perspective, I mean, I know it probably only gets worse as, you kind of go down the racial scale, right? Native American therapists, Asian therapists, biracial therapists, Middle Eastern therapists. So it's just like, I know that it's a glaring void within therapy, and that can somewhat kind of be a barrier, not only for Black folks, but for biracial, for multiracial, for, Hispanics, for,
Most definitely.
it's just the list goes on. So I appreciate you for, definitely standing up and taking that challenge on being who you are, which kind of takes us to the next question. Like, what is it like being a mental health professional, or as you like to be referred to, a behavior health consultant?
In the Black community and in communities of color, there are multiple individuals in the family structure that's dealing with mental health on a daily basis. And I really feel like I'm being paid to do something that I was already doing as a child growing up. My mom struggled with mental health, my father, my sister. I've had my own bouts, with mental health. And to be able to have a conversation with somebody and to provide, support is everything to me. The knowledge that I've accumulated over my time as being a professional, before I was working in a hospital setting or a clinical setting, I worked in an elementary school, and I would see these young boys constantly being diagnosed with ADHD. And, we don't realize how detrimental these labels are for these families and for these young men that grow up in a system that feels like they're not normal or they're not like everyone else.
For sure.
The fact that I have put myself in a position to be able to do something about it means everything to me. And I am extremely careful when I am choosing to diagnose an individual because of what I saw working in a school setting, or because of what I saw at the ground level when I was a case manager, and how detrimental those labels can be to families that follow some people for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, you definitely play an important role, because, like, even thinking about what you just said from a educational setting, and thinking about, individuals that I know who were probably misdiagnosed, or just kind of like having a system of people around them that were just lazy and just say, hey, this student is this way because of that, right?
Right.
And that definitely follows a person for a very long time, right? And I think about individuals that are close to me. I don't want to put anybody's business out there, but without their consent, but just thinking about, what, and seeing firsthand what that can do to an individual, like mentally, right? Because it's just like, okay, I've been labeled as this, so I'm not smart enough to do this. I'm not capable of doing this because they say I got ADHD or something like that, right? So I think, like, being misdiagnosed and dealing with people who are in environments that they're not prone to being in, and not being competent, or not being, I wouldn't say competent, but not being relatable enough to understand that, okay, this kid might have something going on at home that you might not necessarily understand, right? So I think you were sharing a story with us about the girl who was kind of misdiagnosed.
Right.
Could you kind of share? Could you kind of share that story with us?
So we have students that home life contribute to their behaviors in the classroom. And, this young lady couldn't sit still. She had a hard time focusing during tests. And it was because she was used to having background noise going on constantly. She comes from a big family where people are constantly communicating in the background. People are yelling, people are screaming, people are listening to music. And, she was diagnosed with ADHD. She was told that, she had a hard time focusing and she couldn't focus without medication. And there's alternate ways to deal with behaviors without using medication. Medication is detrimental to, an extent. Some people needs medication, but, the label on the medication clearly states that, we recommend you not take longer than 6 months, but yet we have people taking medications for their entire lives.
Yeah.
Long story short, we provided this young lady with an MP3 player, with ocean sounds and calming music, and she excelled in the classroom, and those behavior problems disappeared, and she had no problem focusing at all. So, I think we need to be more creative in the accommodations that we provide our students with versus labeling them and misdiagnosing them, and potentially leading them to depend on medication as a crutch.
For sure. I mean, that's an excellent example of putting different practices in use. Like, you don't always have to throw medicine at everything. And I think our society has kind of gotten used to just throwing medicine at problems, right? So I don't know. That was a really cool, dope story. Which kind of takes us into the next question. Could you kind of share your perspective on the correlation between upbringing and how we choose to manage our mental health and/or hardships as we get older? And this kind of question is derived from like, I have like the quintessential like Black male story, right? Grew up with a single parent, mother working multiple jobs, and seeing that takes on like a persona of itself, right? So my mother is a very strong, independent, I'm about to get this shit done, I got to provide for my family type of woman, right? So seeing that as a child, I'm just like, okay, I got to take on that energy, right? I got to be a man at a younger age, right? So I think, in society, we kind of teach our women to be strong, independent women, right? You don't need nobody but yourself. And then we kind of teach our men to be kind of emotionalists, right? So I am a byproduct of that. So I would kind of consider myself an unemotional person, right? So that's kind of where this question kind of comes from. So could you kind of share your perspective on the correlation between upbringing and eventually how we manage our mental health growing up?
Most definitely. So growing up, I grew up with my mom and my dad, in my household, and they rarely talked. They hardly talked about their day. They rarely talked about how they were feeling, and both of them would turn inward. So it was only natural that I would, pick up on that behavior. And I find myself struggling now because I have chosen to hold everything in, and that's detrimental. Not being able to express your emotions or talk about how you feel can really lead to depression and anxiety, and a multitude of other things as well. And growing up in a Black household, one of the things that my parents taught me at a young age was that what happens in this house stays in this house.
Oh, for sure. My house was the same way.
Most definitely. And we would see on TV, we would see in our neighborhoods, social workers or mental health professionals coming in and calling DHS and removing certain family members from the home, and it was a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And it caused me to shy away from help or what help was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And, now I still find myself trying to reprogram and buy into this idea of talking to someone else and talking through my problems and letting someone else in so that I can relieve all of this pressure that's building up inside whenever I find myself overwhelmed.
But in the how can I?
And if you want to, we can, we can touch on how, on social media, all you see is people smiling and having a good time. And
okay, I'll ask that. I'll ask that right after this question. Okay, yeah, perfect. Man, look at you dropping dimes, Chris Paul out here, bro. Definitely, man. So just kind of hearing all of that and internalizing it just kind of, we don't ask for help, right? Especially when you're taught unintentionally to turn inward, right? To not express, not ask for help, right? And that's just kind of like, that's who we are, especially as Black men. Like we're told to just shut up, don't cry, and keep going, right? And I think we kind of take that into our adulthood, and it kind of shows itself in our relationships. It shows ourselves in our friendships and our work. The way we raise our kids, right? Because the cycle only repeats itself, right? Because if my mother is telling me, yo, like, shut up and keep going, like, you don't got time to cry, we don't got time to talk about our feelings, we got bills to pay, right? So you're going to probably just like I buy the same bread my mother bought when I was young, I'm probably going to, you know, put that same energy into my children. So with that being said, like, what effect do you believe distractions have in relation to someone suppressing their mental health struggles and hardships? Because we have so many different distractions and so many things that can kind of like we can throw ourselves into and not deal with what we have to deal with.
I think it causes us to ignore all the chaos that's going on around us. You know, when we think about this last year that we've had, you know, I think more people are starting to pay attention because those distractions was removed from the pandemic restrictions. People had to sit within those feelings and those emotions that they would typically go out to the club or go out to the bar and, you know, temporarily forget about, you know, or in our conversation that we had prior to our meeting tonight, you know, people throw themselves in relationships that they're not ready to be in, you know, just to try to fill that void that they're in the inside.
And for sure, man, I think we have a society full of like void fillers, right? We have a society full of distractions. And I think it's easier to kind of throw yourself into a distraction rather than deal with what is in front of you. And to your point, the pandemic really, for the first time in our lives, like with everything being shut down, like we couldn't throw ourselves into the bar. We couldn't throw ourselves into the party. We couldn't throw ourselves into the club. We couldn't throw ourselves into the kickback to forget. Like we literally had to like sit with ourselves, right? So in the beginning of the pandemic, it was pandemonium, not really knowing what the hell COVID was, how to get it, how to, you know, and then it was like, okay, cool, we're going to be in this, you know, we getting our stimmies, like, let's Netflix, right? And then after that Netflix phase, it's just like, damn, who am I? What am I doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, never in our lives have we had to spend so much time inside with ourselves. And maybe like, and I'm assuming you have a partner, right?
Right.
So like maybe, you know, for the first time in our lives, like we sitting with our partner, like, damn, who are you? Like the hell? Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like those distractions that we kind of impose on ourselves consistently, even with like social media, for the first time, like we really had to sit with ourselves. And I kind of have a story to tell kind of later on in a podcast, but it was just the pandemic really, I mean, some of the stuff kind of fell out the closet. Like, you know, distractions allow us to sweep things under the rug and put things in suitcases and closets. And I mean, the pandemic was like, yo, what's up? I'm here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Let's talk about it. So
I feel like everyone had an adjustment period.
Oh, for sure. For
sure. Looked different for everyone. It looked different for everyone.
For sure. So kind of segueing from that topic, like what effect do you think mass media has on programming our emotional output?
A major part. You know, when you think about some of the posts that you see on Instagram, if you think about all of the posts that you see on Instagram, you only see people happy. You know, you only see people having a good time. And I think you lose sight of reality and what real life looks like. And in real life, we have emotional ups and downs. You know, you have that emotional roller coaster where you have your bad days and you have your good days. And I think we forget that they're all necessary and for us to achieve happiness. We wouldn't know what happiness felt like if we didn't experience sadness.
Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't know what sadness felt like if we didn't know what it felt like to be happy. So, you know, they're one and the same, and we need both. But again, on social media, you only see the good days.
Yeah.
I think that throws a lot of people in this pit of comparison where they want to compare their lives to someone else. And our journeys are all different.
For sure. I think like, you know, social media can be tricky, right? It's like a rabbit hole of just nothingness at the end of the day. And just kind of being on the other side of those pictures, like you kind of know, like I've been on a date. This is a long time ago. I've been on a date with a chick and she's like taking a picture of her food and she takes like 50 pictures of her food, right? But she only posts one. And I remember seeing that picture on Instagram thinking like, damn, people don't know the behind the scenes of like me holding the phone Yeah, her positioning, her plate to this, like it's just like we try to portray this perfectness online, but our life really ain't like that, right? And I think that that can really send people down a rabbit hole, and only compound the insecurities and the mental health struggles that we might have. So since I feel like, to your point, social media definitely plays a huge role, um, in our emotional output and in just our mental health in general. But kind of taking it back to a more serious note, what are some of the stereotypes and barriers you feel are associated with mental health?
Some of the stigmas are mostly negative. You
Yeah,
know, uh, when I think about family members coming up that struggle with mental health, they were always looked down on, like, there's something wrong with them.
they're
But
crazy. Yeah.
right, they're crazy. You throw out that crazy word, and the truth of the matter is, they just didn't have access to the care that they needed to be successful in society. You know, um, if you there was a point where if you were diagnosed with a mental illness, you couldn't work or you couldn't get a job, and that only contributes more to the symptoms that you experience. Living with mental health. And I think that, again, there's a negative stigma on social service and people wanting to go and get help.
Hmm. For sure. And I think, like, to a certain extent, we all crazy, right? We all got a lot of we all got some loose screws within us. But I think it says something about an individual who says, you know what, like, mentally I'm not up to par right now and I need help. So there's a certain boldness, there's a certain respect level that needs to be had, in reprogramming the way we kind of view, mental health, right? Because we're always like quick to be like, man, you crazy, especially in a black community. Like, mental health is one of those things. It's just like, oh, you seeing a therapist? Like, what you got going on? Like, you crazy? Or like, you got relate? You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's such a stigma surrounding mental health, but it don't need to be a stigma. Like, it's normal. Like, we all got screws loose and we all need help and we all need to talk about it. And it's kind of weird. We all kind of utilize mental health therapy, but just in different ways, right? So I know for sure we were talking yesterday, and I know for me, I was talking about my barber. You know what I'm saying? My barber, Demetrius Watts, was like, that was like a therapy session every week for me. Like, I get my hair cut, you know what I'm saying? We get to talk about relationships, we get to talk about stocks and bonds and all type of stuff. But that was my ace, right?
Right.
And even aside from getting my hair cut, like, if I had a problem, it's just like, yo, Watts, I need to come over. Like, we need to talk while we playing 2K, or we need to take a loop around the city or something. So, you know, we criticize people. We got this negative stigma on people who actually seek professional help, but we do it all the time, right? We got a problem with Susie. I'm gonna call my homeboy Dan, right, and talk about it.
Right.
So we're utilizing mental health resources. It's just not in a professional setting. So the barriers that we have are just kind of like, why are they there? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we all got screws loose. We all a little crazy. We all, you know what I'm saying? We all a little crazy.
And I think something to consider is, am I crazy because I am constantly seeing our community murdered
Mm-hmm.
by the masses, by an institution that was set up to protect us?
Yeah.
Like, think about the toll that has on us as individuals, constantly seeing individuals that look like us murdered for no reason.
For sure. It definitely takes a big toll.
And yet we turn around and we call somebody crazy because they're having a hard time processing it all. And a lot of the mental illnesses that we have and the families across the world are genetic. So it's something that a previous family member struggled with and wasn't able to overcome or wasn't able to get help with, and it's passed down to you. And now it's your turn. It's your turn to break those chains and to start reprogramming the thought process that goes into, this is who I am. I tell people all the time, you don't have depression, you don't have anxiety, you're living with it. you're living with depression, you're living with anxiety.
That's deep.
This is own entity. You're your own person, and you just have to learn to deal with it, and me as a therapist is my job to, help provide that individual with the right tools to be able to live with those illnesses and be successful.
Yeah, for sure. To your point, that generational thing is real, right? Because hurt people, right? We hear that in music all the time. And I feel like a lot in a lot of communities of color, we do not seek professional help. And just generationally, we put band-aids on bullet wounds, right? And that hurt and that trauma oozes on to the next generation, right? And it goes on to the next generation and the next generation. So like whether it's in the Native community, the Black community, the Hispanic community, it's just like we underutilize mental health professionalism or mental health resources all the time, right? And we wonder, and not that we wonder, but it's just like, why do we do that, right? Because we're dealing with a society that is racist, oppressive. We're dealing with environmental racism, structural racism, systematic racism, mass incarceration. We're dealing with food deserts. We're dealing with broken households. We're dealing with all these different things, but we continually, we always use the word resilient, right? But we need to transition from, considering ourselves and praising ourselves for being resilient in all this chaos. And we need to be triumphant, right? So we need to,
most definitely.
And I feel like mental health is a big part of that, right? We need to transition from, praising the struggle, praising the working 3 jobs and being a single parent and, seeing a killing on this day and going to work the next day. Like we need to transition from being resilient to triumphant, right? And I feel like people like you are a bridge to that, right? You're a bridge from being resilient to being triumphant, because being resilient is not fun, right? Being a strong, independent person is not fun. Having to be strong for everybody else is not fun, right? So I feel like, we definitely need to your point, reprogram the way we look at mental health, because the way we looking at it now is just not. It's not the business. It's not the business. So
you got to think about it like this too. You wouldn't have, if you was having heart problems, you wouldn't have your cousin come over to the crib and do heart surgery.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, it's the same thing.
Right. Like the way we think about things and the way our brain work is really important. And it takes a trained professional to be able to help us reprogram a lot of generational thoughts, generational pain, and generational trauma that has accumulated over 300 years.
For sure.
That's not something that we can just put in anyone's hands.
But kind of transitioning into the next phase of our conversation is utilization, right? You shared a document with me prior to this interview, and I was looking at the utilization rate of mental health, and I was just kind of like taken aback, and I'm just like, yo, what? Like, as much stuff as we deal with from a societal standpoint, we utilize mental health at the lowest rate, right? So looking at the list, it's Asians at 23%, Blacks at 33%, Hispanics at 34%, multiracial mixed people at 43%, or did I say that backwards? Hispanics at 34%, mixed race, multiracial at 43%, lesbian, gay, bisexual adults at 49%, and at 50% is white people, right? And I remember being in my undergrad, I got my bachelor's in public health. And as you know, public health is this vast, like big, just mental health is a beast, right? It's very simplistic, but it's a beast. And we covered mental health. And I remember seeing a slide in one of my classes on this very topic, utilization. And I remember seeing white people at the top, and I'm just like, what? With all this shit that we go through as people of color, like we utilize mental health the least. And the way that society is basically built for white people, they use it the most. Like what they going through that we not going through, I don't get it. So could you kind of like elaborate on utilization?
Most definitely. You know, when you again think about our upbringing, and when you think about the access to care,
Oh, that's a good point. Good point.
Walmart is everywhere.
Yeah.
And in a lot of white communities, there are multiple providers. In a lot of white communities, you have families that have insurance that cover mental health needs. And, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of disproportion when it comes to access to care or, you know, access to means in communities of color. And knowledge is everything. So with that being said, also the outreach is different. You know, when you individuals looking for the help that they need. And I believe that it's systematic. And when I mean systematic, we've again been brainwashed into believing that the services that have been put in place to help individuals are not there to help us. So it could be a minute problem, and other races or the white race will go and address that problem before it becomes overwhelming or becomes big to where it's unmanageable. In the Black communities, we wait until the very last minute.
Yeah.
The very last minute.
Yeah.
You know, because we have so much else to worry about and so much else going on. You know, when a person is thinking about taking their lives, now we want to take mental health serious, you know, but a lot of times it's too late. So I'm saying this because we need to be adamant on going to see the doctor when we're not feeling well. We need to be adamant, you know, when we're feeling low moods or starting to notice isolating behaviors. We need to go seek professional help to address these things before they snowball into something catastrophic and we lose another individual in our community.
For sure. And not only that, you know, we pass it to the next generation, to our point earlier. But relatability and accessibility is something that I got out of your answer. And thinking about utilization, thinking about my mother that I described earlier, right? Single parent, working multiple jobs, trying to provide for her 3 children. Like my mom probably wouldn't have had time to seek professional help, right? Because she's on to the next job, right? Or she's thinking about how am I going to pay this bill or how we, you know what I mean? So I think that might be another thing that we need to, I don't know, debunk, right? Making time to make sure our mental is right. But as you were talking, I was just kind of thinking about that. Like, damn, could my mother have sacrificed money from her check to seek professional help? Right. And that's something that we have to ask ourselves as a community, because my mother is not monolithic. Right. So my story is not, you know, just one of one. Like my story is one of millions. Right. So I think, like, as you were talking about your utilization and accessibility, I thought about relatability. So, right, like when my mom takes off of work, walks into that mental health provider, like, who is she talking to? Right. Is she talking to someone who looks like you? Or is she talking to someone that looks like, you know, somebody else? Right. So that's another element. So it's just like, you know, to your point, there's a lot of layers, almost systematically, a lot of layers that kind of makes us think that we don't have time for mental health, that we don't have time to utilize these resources that can heal us mentally. And our brain is a very powerful, I wouldn't say weapon, but a very powerful thing that we undervalue, right? We don't take care of our brain the way that we take care of our hamstrings and our quads and our calves, because we're constantly stretching and doing yoga and lifting weights. But how are we up here, right? So to your point, man, you just made it make sense. It is kind of systematic the way that we underutilize seeking professional help. And within your answer, you kind of talked about suicide a little bit. And I know this is something we wanted to cover, you know, during our pre-interview process. And I really wanted to cover this because I know, talking to my cousin Mark Brown, and who I'm talking to every day, you know, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, and I don't know if he meant to say it, but he kind of casually said it. And he was talking about a series of episodes that he had on this very topic, which is suicide. And this is an individual I talk to every single day. And I was just kind of like, what? Bro, what? Like you? Like I've been talking to you every day for the last 5, 6, 7 years, bro. And I've never, ever came up, right? And I marinated on the conversation that we had, just thinking like, damn, like am I am I doing something wrong as not only a friend or a family member or a cousin, but like, am I not creating space for that conversation to be had, right? But then fast forward, I'm thinking about, damn, I was just in that mental state a couple months ago, and I did not tell anybody. And so I get where he's coming from. I can empathize with him now on why he chose not to share, or he chose to share all after the fact. Because I know, like, from personal experience, you know, at the peak of, you know, at the couple of months ago, my business was at a peak, right? Everything is just operating, crazy orders coming in. I employed 2 people. Like, it was really dope.
That's major.
But with that came a lot of, for lack of a better term, shit, right? A lot of things came with that. A lot of unwanted attention, a lot of hearsay, a lot of this, a lot of that. And it took its toll on me. It took a heavy toll on me, to the point to where, like, I had a hard time getting out of bed in the morning. Like, I darked out my room. Like, I put up blackout curtains on my windows, and I was just really basking in my depression. Even to the point of, like, telling my 2 assistants, like, yo, y'all don't need to come in. Like, I'm gonna handle it by myself. I'll let work get backed up. I was just in this very depressive state. And then it kind of got worse when I kind of created the environment to make it worse, right? To strengthen my depression, right? Like I said, I blacked out my rooms. I'm isolating myself from the people that I'm working with every day. I'm isolating myself from my roommates, and I'm locking myself in this room. And in that room, I'm having battles with myself. I'm having battles with my mental, right? Even when Mark called me, my cousin, even when my cousin called me, I'm putting on that facade. I'm putting on that voice, right? As if everything is normal, when everything was not normal. Like, I'm literally waking up every morning thinking about suicide. I'm going to bed every night thinking about suicide. Wow. In my room, right? And because in my room, it's just like I'm comfortable enough to let my thoughts go, right? Because once I open that doorknob and I walk over that threshold, like, I have to be Darius, the POC leader. I have to be Darius, the employer. I have to be Darius, the guy that's getting interviewed. I have to be Darius, the guy that's on magazine covers. Like, I have to be that person. I have to be that strong leader of the POC movement, right? When I walk over that threshold. But in my room, I was just going through it, bro. And I remember, like, being in that suicidal state. I was so down and out, bro. Like, my ex-girlfriend, she told me when we first started dating that she had a gun in her. I think it was either in her house or her car. I couldn't remember. But in that same time frame, she went out of town, and I found a key. I almost felt like it was destiny that I found this key that I thought I lost at her crib. And I think I might have been watching her dog. I'm not sure. But I went to her crib, and I actually was looking for the gun, right? So I'm looking for the gun because in my mind, I'm thinking, like, bro, it's like this cloud that's hovering over me, this depression that's just kind of got me, like, fighting myself in the room. Like, this shit ain't going nowhere. And my only escape is suicide. And that's the way I was thinking, right? So halfway through me going through her shit, I'm thinking, like, bro, what the hell am I doing, bro? Like, I'm better than this. So I put everything back, like, perfect. Like, so she wouldn't notice. I never told her until she probably hears this now. And then, depression is one of those things that's up and down, like a roller coaster, right? So I come off that moment like, damn, I really let myself, like, get to that, right? I'm not in my room no more. Like, I gotta, like, I'm dead. I'm Mr. POC. Like, I gotta be stronger than this. And that's a high moment. And then the low moment would come back, and I would find myself at Bimart, right? I'm at Bimart a couple months earlier. I'm at Bimart looking for a fishing rod. because I'm trying to go fishing. I'm trying to, it's COVID. I'm trying to go fishing. But I remember seeing that they had guns there, and I'm just like, oh, okay, damn, I didn't know Bymart was like that, right? And for those who don't live in Oregon or don't know Bymart is basically a place that just kind of sells just everything. Like they just kind of sell a little bit of everything, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's kind of like Walmart's little distant cousin. But I'm in Bymart and I'm thinking to myself, like, damn, like I couldn't find a gun there because I'm back in that low moment. I'm like, yo, I need to buy a weapon, right? I'm looking at the prices. I'm doing price matches. Like I'm in this bitch just like fully committed to buying a gun, bro. Like it's just, I was down and out. And I remember one of the things that kind of like deterred me from actually purchasing a gun was all of the gun talk that was happening in society, right? We need to get mental health checks. We need to do background checks. We need to do all of these things. And I'm just like, well, damn, like I'm not going to pass the mental health test because I'm going through some shit. So they're not going to sell me this gun. So like, then like, what am I going to do? Right. Like, what am I going to do in the midst of all of this chaos? Like I want to take my life. I'm preparing for it. So, the gun thing didn't work. I thought about the pill thing. And I kind of got off of that. And then I started to, in this downward state, I started making preparations, right? I started thinking about the future. I started thinking about, okay, like, because growing up, I always thought like suicide is selfish. It only hurts the people around you. So I'm like, you know what? Let me write letters to these people. Let me write letters to my ex. Let me write letters to, Emma. Let me write letters to Yvette. Let me write letters to my mother, Mark, Demetrius, JD. Like, let me write letters to my people to let them know, like, I love y'all. I'm sorry. I was going through some shit, but it just had, you know what I'm saying? And I remember I wrote these letters on my phone and my notes on my phone. And it just kind of got heavy. Like I'm really, really writing to these people as if I'm gone, as if I'm dead, right? I'm writing a letter to my dad, my brother, my sister. I'm making sure my assistants got the password to my website so they can keep running the business. Like I'm thinking ahead, and I'm just like, yo, what am I doing, bro? Like what? Like, am I really here? And I remember thinking to myself, I heard a record by Big Sean called Deep Reverence. And I feel like that was kind of one of those things that kind of changed my mental outlook because it let me know that I'm not alone. It let me know that like, damn, I'm not the only person out here feeling like this. Like Big Sean in Deep Reverence featuring the late Nipsey Hussle talked about his mental health struggles and talked about thinking about suicide. And in that moment, I was just like, damn, I'm not the only person. Like, I thought I was like a monolith. I thought like I'm dealing with this shit on my own and I have nowhere to turn. I have no one to talk to because nobody's going to understand. So I hear this record and I'm just like, damn, this is me. And I got that song on repeat. Like I'm not alone, like on some Michael Jackson, like you are not alone type shit. Like that's kind of how I felt. Right. But that song was really the catalyst in helping me change the tide and kind of look at life differently, right? I'm going outside, I'm looking up at the sky, and I'm seeing, and them Oregon winters hit different. You know what I'm saying? Them Oregon winters will compound a depression on top of depression. Like it's really like that up here. But in my mind, and you know how dynamic that weather is, it goes from like drizzle to hard rain to like, damn, I'm about to go to the beach. You know what I'm saying? To like raining again. So it's like really dynamic. And I remember going outside one day and it was a crack in the sky and I could see the blue sky, but it was, of course it was all, gray, but I could see blue. And in my mind, I'm like and it just metaphorically, I'm just like, all this shit I'm going through is temporary, right? All the gray clouds that's hovering over me, it's temporary because on the other side of that is blue clouds. On the other side of that is the sun. I just don't see it right now, but it's there. And, that kind of prompted me to create a championship routine that would prevent me from getting to those dark places, right? So being a little bit more vulnerable to people I talk to every day, you know what I'm saying? Being a little bit vulnerable to my homie Jerron, being a little bit more vulnerable to Mark Brown, being willing to talk about certain things with certain friends and certain peoples and relationships and stuff like that. So I think like vulnerability, and just like that toxic mental pride, that toxic something, we can invent a word for it later. But I think that really was a catalyst to me struggling for such a long time, thinking that, to your point earlier, I'm gonna turn inward. I'm gonna deal with it myself. Like I don't need to involve anybody in this. This is a me problem. I'm gonna handle it myself. But I didn't realize that I wasn't strong enough to handle it myself, right? Because I would allow, outside this room, outside of walking out of my personal space, like I had to be a hero. Like I had to be like, oh, that's Mr. POC right there. Like I had to be that. But in my room, it was just like I was at war with myself, right? I'm up here making preparations for suicide. I'm up here writing letters as if I'm dead already. Like I'm up here, Googling guns and bullets. And I'm just like, you know what I'm saying? And I thought that I can, and that was me dealing with it myself. So to anybody that's listening, it's just like, don't be afraid to kind of tap in with people you talk to and people that you're close to and just be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? Because like to our point earlier, we're all a little crazy. We all got screws loose. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's perfect. And it's probably a facade.
Yeah. We all have our own issues,
For sure.
We deal with on a daily basis. And I encourage everybody listening to develop a championship routine. That's major. And I love that you were able to share your story and you felt comfortable enough sharing your story, because we need to normalize this as much as possible to encourage the masses to open up about their feelings and, their experiences with depression and suicide. It's important.
For sure, man. I think vulnerability and just normalizing it, and to your point, reprogramming the way that we approach our mental strength is important. And I think like because I am who I am and I represent what I represent, I have a shirt within the collection that advocates for mental health awareness, right? And prior to that, it was just like, I'm saying that because I'm supposed to say it. But having gone through some, for lack of a better word, having gone through some shit, like that shirt hits a little different, right? So when people say, hey, what's your favorite shirt in the collection? It's always been Immigration Is Beautiful off top. But now it's kind of veering towards like that mental health awareness, product, because that to me like hits a little different now. So I think my advocacy for mental health has been strengthened. And I think that, my approach to my mental health struggles now is going to be a little different moving forward. And I think we all need to kind of like analyze how are we taking care of we go to the gym to work out our biceps, our pecs, our abs. We doing all of this for our glutes. We got the homegirls doing squats. You know what I'm saying? We on the bench press trying to get a chest for the beach. But like, what are we doing for our mental? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we doing for our mental? You know what I mean? And I think like I have a newfound respect for individuals like you who have stepped up and answered the call and, created that relatability and accessibility for people who are really struggling, right? Because it's super duper important. And I just said super duper. Yes, I did. But it's super important. It's super, super important.
And I just want to say warning signs look different for everybody. A person doesn't have to be dealing with depression and anxiety for a long period of time. You can be on top of the world and have suicidal thoughts. So again, I'm super excited that you felt comfortable with opening up and sharing your story. Thank you.
Nah, no need to thank me, man. You definitely set the tone. I'm just kind of listening to our interview, listening to you speak. You definitely kind of made me kind of rethink some things, right? Utilization, turning inward, the family dynamics that play into this. Like I'm kind of listening to you talk taking notes, and it just makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I think it was just kind of apropos for me to kind of take it there, just so people can relate, right? But kind of transitioning to another topic. Let's talk about church and religion, right? We talk about some of the barriers that kind of prohibit people from utilizing mental health professionals or mental health resources. Like, what role do you think church and religion plays in the perception and a relationship for mental health awareness?
Oh, it plays a major part. When I was collecting research for the show, I was surprised to see that in the South, in the Bible Belt, the access to care, that those states were at the bottom of the poll. Access to care, availability, and it was shocking. But at the same time, it put things in perspective for me, because growing up, the church was my foundation. So whenever I was dealing with a problem, whenever my parents was dealing with an issue or a problem, whenever they were experiencing depression, they would turn to the church. And the church was the place that was supposedly, able to fix everything, and I credit the church for a lot. I credit religion for a lot, because it taught me how to believe in something that, I couldn't see. And that led me to believe in a dream and to keep going and to achieve the things that I didn't think were possible. But again, I think that, there's a major part that religion and the church plays, because there's a lot of negative down talk when it comes to
stigma.
Negative stigma, right? So I was having a conversation with my dad the other day, and I was telling him, like, I'm struggling a little bit, Pops. And he asked me what did I mean? And I told him, I miss being around my people. I miss having a community of people that I can go conjugate, with. And he told me that, well, you worrying because you're not praying enough. And I understand where he's coming from, and I'm not downplaying prayer at all, but at the same time, prayer is just not enough. I need to go sit down and talk to somebody that's in front of me, about these issues and these problems.
Oh, for sure, man. I think, to your point, the church has kind of always been that thing for the Black community, right? Even dating back to slavery, it's just like, pray about it. You know what I'm saying? We're going to pray our way out of slavery. We're going to pray our way out of the Reconstruction period. We're going to pray our way out of segregation. We're going to pray our way out of mass incarceration. We're going to pray our way out of the 3 strikes law. We're going to pray our way out of, gun violence, unarmed gun. Like, we're going to pray our way out of it. And that's kind of been the narrative, right? We got to pray about, let's prayer circle, right? That's kind of been that narrative. And I think that kind of is almost a catalyst for creating that rift in between seeking professional help and just going to the church when it's convenient. Because a lot of people nowadays go to church when it's convenient, or pray when it's convenient. So it's one of those things that's like, why not utilize both? Why not prayer and, say a prayer and then call up your therapist and make an appointment? Like, you can do both, right? You can have your cake and you can eat it too, right? So, I mean, it just makes sense, right? But the Bible Belt and just thinking about the South, thinking about, the disparities in utilization, it makes, like, we talked on the phone the other day, and it was just like, yo, there's a church on every corner in the South, and it's not like that on the West Coast.
3 or 4 churches.
For sure. Like that
accessibility of being able to walk into a church and to receive that peace that's needed to get to the next day is there. It's close. And you don't have to pay a copay.
For sure. You just walk in and just like, let me talk to a deacon, let me talk to a pastor, let me talk to the first lady. Let's pray these issues off. But hey, I mean, I'm not to knock prayer, because at one time, like, I was headed to Lipscomb University and I was trying to, be a pastor myself. Before all of this, of course, I had like an epiphany in my life, completely went in a different direction. But at one point, I was about that church thing. Like, I literally used to have a pocket Bible in my back pocket, like always. Like, I was really about that Jesus gang or die life, like, for real. So I kind of know like both dynamics. I know what it's like to be in the church and being fully engulfed in the church. I know what it's like to be halfway in the church. I know what it's like to be spiritual. So you can do both, right? You can call your pastor, call your deacon, pray about it, and then right after that, call your mental health therapist, right? Let's normalize that, right? But you said something about talking to your pops about feeling isolated, right?
Right.
So we're gonna talk about something that may not be necessarily related to mental health, but something that we both experienced. We're both from Nashville, the great state of Nashville, Tennessee. You from Chat, I'm from Nashville, but that
Right.
transition from the South to the Pacific Northwest is real. Like that shit here a little different.
Oh man.
And I think Oregon wasn't what I expected it to be. So can you kind of share like your time here and like what are some things that's kind of caught you by surprise living in Oregon?
So I know that we have switched topics, but again, I grew up in the church, and that's what my foundation is. So
Mm-hmm.
talking to my clinical supervisor, Roseanne Murmur, when I was really struggling with some depression and anxiety, she asked me, one of the first questions she asked me was, "Have you been going to church?" Right here. And I was
Yeah.
like, no, not really. And I was shocked to hear the question because, again, religion is not really big here in the
Yeah.
Pacific West, and it's almost like you look down upon if you exercise your faith, or if you are encouraging someone else to turn to faith, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to hear her ask me that question, I was completely shocked. And I told her no, and she said, "Why not? It's a part of your routine." And I think that by going to attend service somewhere, you will feel a little piece of home,
Mm-hmm.
because I felt distant from and I'm 3,000 miles away from home. I don't have any friends here. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know where any other hangout spots was. And I had to just kind of sit alone in my mess, you know. And again, I thought that I was coming out here to escape it all, but I realized that,
Yeah.
it was all a beautiful facade. Don't get me wrong, the Pacific Northwest is a beautiful place, but at the same time, I think growing up in the South, I was used to racism, aggressive racism,
Yeah.
and knowing if a person wanted me there versus them not wanting me to be around.
Yeah.
And here, it's in the air. You never know.
You never know. You never know.
A
And it's
person will smile at you, pat you on your back, and could be plotting on your demise.
for
And
sure.
that's dangerous. That's scary. And I was really shocked to hear about the history, related to a lot of social injustice and social issues here in the city.
For sure, man. I think that Oregon has a very jaded historical past that isn't often talked about. A lot of people don't know that Oregon was founded as a white utopia, right? So, and it was basically illegal to live in Oregon as a person of color, meaning that you could not have a job, you cannot own land up until like the 1920s, 1930s. And then you kind of get into the Vanport flood. You get into Portland being one of the fastest gentrifying cities in America. Um, Portland has a very liberal perception, right? And I feel like white people here are a little different, because they kind of Oregon has kind of branded itself as like the liberal capital of the country, right? And that white bubble here is big because there's not a lot of diversity, right? So people preach, being liberal and all of this, but they really don't have like a close proximity to diversity. They probably never dealt with diversity before. So interacting with them is a little different sometimes, right? You can have people that's like performative. You can have people that's doing a little bit too much. And I think for me in my transition from the east to the west, like I would find myself looking for black people, right? And when I saw black people, I used to count on my hand every day the amount of black people I would see on campus. And I'm just like, yo, why am I doing that? Like, the hell's going on? Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's just being black up here, it just hits a little different. And even the black people from Oregon, it's just like you have some that's like, okay, yes, thank you. Then you have some that's just like you can tell that at a young age they just chose to blend in. They chose to just to blend in to make the majority comfortable. So it just kind of like it was a weird dynamic, and you can always tell when somebody is from like Cali or somebody from, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just Oregon, Portland is, I think Portland brands itself as a weird city and is indeed that. It is a weird city. But this environment has taught me so much about myself, taught me so much about society, and really it laid the foundation for creating the People of Color clothing brand. So it may not be a lot of diversity here. It may not be a lot of whatever, but you know, the People of Color clothing brand allows us to have, and this is a shameless plug, but the People of Color clothing brand allows us, in our small presence, allows us to be a little bit bigger, right? Because then we're walking conversation pieces. And, you know, I don't know if other coaches do this, but I know when I see another brother on the street, it's the head nod, right? So, you know, it's the head nod. But for the people that have, you know, invested in the People of Color clothing movement, you have that logo on your chest. That's our head nod. It's almost like that me too. Like, okay, you surviving like I'm surviving, man. We in this together, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Peace, love, and happiness to you. So this being I don't like to say a minority, but being an individual in this type of like being an individual in this white dominating environment, like creating something that enables me to have a bigger presence, allows me to create awareness, allows people to feel like the discomfort that I feel by reading what's on the back of my garment, like that. I mean, that's powerful, right? And you know, the three ethos of the brand is community, culture, and confidence. And when you wear POC, especially in an environment like this, you gonna feel that. You know what I mean? You're gonna feel that. But yeah, man, you got any last words, man? I feel like you know, I didn't talk your head off and ask you a ton of questions. You got any last words?
I think what you have been able to do with People of Color clothing brand is amazing, and you have created that community that I was longing for.
Oh, that's dope. I appreciate that.
And you know, I'm encouraging everybody, man, to go check out the website, go copy it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. So if people are listening, you know, they've heard our conversation about mental health. Sorry I didn't get to the IG questions. I feel like I've asked them so many questions to this point, but I want to appreciate everybody who submitted questions on our IG. Carol, Isadora, Hallie, Manny, all you different people. I didn't name everybody, but those are just some of the people I see off the rip. Thank you for submitting questions on Instagram. But where can people reach you? Like, what is some of your information that you want to throw out there, just in case people want to reach out, maybe schedule an appointment? Yeah, kind of, you know, talk your business real quick.
Yeah. So we're working on a website right now, me and the team. So, you know, we have a website up, man, a blog, you know, educating our people and educating the masses about mental health and, you know, the resources in the area. So I'll make sure that, you know, we provide all of that information below.
For sure, man. So I just want to say thank you again for sharing your time with us. This is a very important, very heavy topic that needed to be discussed. I didn't realize it was Mental Health Awareness Month until like maybe May 15th, but it was just, it's apropos that we did this. Very excited to upload this, very excited to get this conversation flowing and going. And yeah, man, thank you for your time, bro. And you're welcome on the POC platform at any time, any time. I know we kind of talked about some other topics that we might want to cover. So we might be seeing you back on the podcast again, hearing your voice again. But again, just thank you for sharing your time with the POC community and the POC platform. And yeah.
Man, thank you. Thank you. You know, it's an honor to be on the show and to be able to utilize this platform to talk about something that I'm extremely passionate about. and something that, our people can really benefit from. So again, thank you for this platform. And again, please go support the cause and the movement.
For sure. And I'm going to be uploading his podcast playlist. We didn't get to that. I know we kind of running out of time, but we didn't get to his podcast playlist. But that will be made available on Spotify and on Apple Music. So be looking out for that. That is your show, ladies and gentlemen. The Colour Reimagined Podcast, presented to you by People of Color Clothing, Mental Health Edition. See you next episode.
Afterlife, I figure I'm the man and I have main